Doctor Who just celebrated its 60th year, and we like to celebrate by getting granular. Any fool can write a top 60 stories list, but we're breaking it down further. The plan is to be ranking single frames by 2063, because at this rate, it certainly could continue into 2063. Using the very scientific process of chronological order, we present the 60 best Doctor Who TV episodes. 1. An Unearthly Child, Part 1. It's always worth stating how aggressively unsettling Doctor Who has been. First of all, there's the title sequence and theme music. What is this black and white swirling void? What is that noise? Is that music? Am I supposed to be this frightened? And then there's the Doctor himself, threatening his granddaughter and kidnapping 2 school teachers. The first episode finishes with a police box seemingly escaping this Earth, tearing a hole in the fabric of reality, using the vortex effects from the title sequence, and then appearing leaning and incongruous in a desert landscape before a shadow shows us someone else has borne witness to this event. You'd be forgiven for being alarmed. 2. The Daleks, The Survivors, Part 2. Landing on an unknown planet and unaware of the radiation levels, the Doctor takes Susan, Ian, and Barbara to look at a vast metallic city. What could possibly go wrong? They meet the Daleks, who temporarily paralyze Ian and imprison the travelers, taking a vital TARDIS component. And they're dying of radiation sickness. That's what could go wrong. All of which means Susan is about to embark on one of the most terrifying experiences of her life. 3. The Dalek Invasion of Earth, The Waking Ally, Part 5. The Daleks have conquered a future Earth, and the Doctor and his friends find themselves captured or part of a rebellion, heading for the Daleks' mineworks in Bedfordshire to find out what their ultimate plan is. The penultimate episode of this 6-part story is one that plays to Terry Nation's strengths. A grim war story where we see the human cost of the invasion. Barbara is betrayed to the Daleks in return for food, the man Ian is traveling with finds his robotized brother, and they end up killing each other. But there are also moments of light. Susan is falling in love, and once captured, Barbara uses her cunning to stay alive. Then there's the reveal of the Dalek plan in all its gonzo pulpy glory. 4. The Rescue, Desperate Measures, Part 2. A 2-episode reset after the Dalek Invasion of Earth, The Rescue introduces Vicky as a girl from the future who is stuck on the planet Dido with Bennett, an older man invalided after their spaceship crashed. Both are menaced by Coquillion, a bipedal creature with a face like an insectoid warthog. The Doctor, Ian, and Barbara arrive and promise to help Vicky escape. The second episode gives us plenty of twinkling wizardry from Hartnell as the Doctor calms and befriends the orphan girl.
Now, it's going to be all right. We're not going to jeopardize your safety.
You've got an alluring part of the character there. The cast's family dynamic giving off real warmth. And then you've got the Doctor confronting Coquillion. A great shout if you're intent on introducing someone to the show with a bit of Hartnell drama. 5. The Romans, The Slave Traders, Part 1. This is where approximately 90% of the Ian and Barbara companionshipping comes from. For a brief moment, before the slapstick and the carry-on farce ensues, or in Ian's case, the incredibly traumatizing enslavement subplot, the TARDIS crew relax in an unoccupied villa, reclining in togas and necking amphoras of wine. Before the Doctor and Vicky succumb to their inevitable wanderlust, it's lovely to see them all simply hanging out together. 6. The Space Museum, Part 1. The general consensus is that the first episode of The Space Museum is great, while the other 3 are a bit of a letdown. While this is slightly unfair, no episodes featuring Vicky instigating armed revolution can be totally bad, this is a superb opener. The TARDIS crew visit the titular museum to find time is askew. Dropped glasses return to hands, whole outfits change in the blink of an eye, no one leaves any footprints. Then they discover an exhibit that chills them to the bone. Themselves. 7. The Time Meddler, The Watcher, Part 1. In its second series, Doctor Who was frequently experimenting. Writer and script editor Dennis Spooner penned a successfully funny script, inventing a subgenre that became known as pseudo-historicals, essentially allowing for anachronisms and alien invasions of history. The Time Meddler is accordingly funny, inventive, and bold. New companion Stephen is set to bickering with Vicky, who remains one of the best characters of the 60s thanks to Maureen O'Brien's irrepressible enthusiasm and comic timing. Peter Purves plays Stephen a little like Hartnell's early Doctor in that he's a smart grouch who gets taken along for the ride. Hartnell nails some of the Doctor's best comic moments. The fizz of the series' invention here is quite something to see. 8. The Mythmakers, Small Profit, Quick Return, Part 2. The TARDIS crew are the titular Mythmakers, but the story's treatment of the mythic is bleakly hilarious. Set around the siege of Troy, we have Odysseus and Priam, Helen and Cassandra, all rendered as ugly personalities, people far from the stuff of legend. Like Blackadder goes forth, the comic bickering is building to something, but the second episode is the comic high point of Donald Cotton's witty script. 9. The 10th Planet, Episode 2. The Doctor, Ben, and Polly arrive at the South Pole Spaceship Tracking Station in 1986, only to find ships going out of control and a new but familiar planet in the sky. Outside, a flying saucer touches down. The Cybermen have arrived. What really works about this introduction is the contrast between the impassive, sing-song voiced cyborgs and the very emotional human response to astronauts in danger. When Ben escapes and kills a Cyberman, he's clearly upset by it. The contrast only serves to make the Cybermen seem more uncanny, and really this is the only TV story that leans into this until at least 2006. 10. The Power of the Daleks, Episode 6. The Doctor, having regenerated, is a very different person, and while Polly is sure that it's the same person, Ben isn't. They land on a human colony and discover they are trying to revive a crashed Dalek ship. The Doctor's warnings go unheeded as the Daleks manipulate the colonists into reviving more of them. Finally, in this last episode, the promised carnage is unleashed in a cacophony of screams, gunfire, and mechanical voices. The release of tension is unbelievable here, and the coldness of the many deaths almost overwhelming. To cap it all, the new Doctor isn't a reassuring figure yet. Some incredibly bold choices were made making this story. 11. The Web of Fear, Episode 4. This base Under Siege story overcomes the limitations of its formula by actually making everyone pretty competent. There's a general air of paranoia due to the antagonist seemingly knowing the army's every move. And when said antagonist is a shapeless entity who has animated some robot yetis that spray a deadly mist/fog that horribly kills anyone it touches, this is alarming. In this episode, friends are kidnapped and possessed. Soldiers are killed despite actually being good at their jobs, in action sequences directed with pace and clarity. The deaths really land. 12. The Mind Robber, Episode 1. An extra episode had to be added to Peter Ling's 4-part story, and so script editor Derek Sherwin came up with a first episode making use of existing sets, props, and a white void. This lead-in uses the TARDIS crew of the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe to expand their backstories and build an air of unease before a startling cliffhanger where everything seems to fall apart. 13. The War Games, Episode 9. The Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe find themselves in the trenches of World War I. But why is there an English redcoat in prison? Where does the general keep disappearing to? And why is there a Roman legion roaming around outside? These are the War Games, and they need to get hold of whoever's running them. There is an unspoken issue with the War Games, which is that it's 10 episodes long and so inevitably repeats itself. The bickering baddies with their satisfying petty squabbles, Philip Maddock being icy cool as their boss, a burgeoning romance among the players, remind you of why you enjoyed the journey here. 14. The Silurians, Episode 6. The Doctor is sent with Dr. Liz Shaw and UNIT to investigate the power losses at an underground nuclear base in Derbyshire, and it turns out these are due to a colony of lizard people who ruled the Earth before humanity. Can the Doctor find a peaceful solution to both sides' increasing antagonism? No. 15. The Three Doctors, Episode 1. People are disappearing. Strange creatures who look like they're made of bubbles blown in a bloody milkshake are attacking UNIT headquarters. The Time Lords are powerless to stop a relentless energy drain, but send the only person who can help the Doctor in the circumstances. Himself. I mean, come on. If you're not on board after that description, why are you even watching this show? 16. Carnival of Monsters, Episode 1. The Doctor and Jo arrive on a ship under attack from a plesiosaur. While on a far and distant planet, some entertainers find themselves under interrogation from a group of gray-faced administrators. How, though, are the two places connected? Similar to the Space Museum, though with the more popular next 3 episodes, Carnival of Monsters drip feeds clues to the audience before a bravura cliffhanger.
Can't you help them?
But I should have to put my hand inside.
Oh, go on, Bob. We can't stand here and let them be torn to pieces.
It's a really funny concept, delivered with panache by the actors, taking the piss out of the BBC management, and gently mocking Doctor Who itself. 17. The Ark in Space, Part 3. The Doctor, Sarah, and Harry arrive in a seemingly abandoned space station in the far future, and discover a large group of humans in suspended animation. Unfortunately, a Warren Queen / giant pregnant wasp has got on board and laid its eggs in one of the technicians. Essentially alien for children, the Ark in Space embodies producer Philip Hinchcliffe's wish to intensify the horror. Part 3 opens with the space station commander removing his bright green mutating hand from his pocket, while the voice of the long-dead Earth High Minister gives a rousing speech about how they're going to save humanity, and doesn't let up from there.
We should absorb the humans.
The Doctor nearly kills himself accessing the Queen's memories, while the Warren Grubs try to kill everyone. It's unrelenting. 18. Genesis of the Daleks, Part 4. The Time Lords send the Doctor, Sarah, and Harry back in time to avert the creation of the Daleks. This goes really badly. The Doctor has just failed to avert the Thal attack on the Khaled city, meaning the Khaleds have all been wiped out, apart from their scientific elite, protected in their underground bunker, and the Daleks. After having given the Thals the means to destroy his own people, Davros, the creator of the Daleks, unleashes his creation on them. Astonishingly bleak. 19. The Deadly Assassin, Part 4. The Doctor is summoned to Gallifrey and has a premonition that the President will be assassinated. Due to a series of unfortunate misunderstandings, the Doctor is then arrested for assassinating the President. In trying to clear his name, he uncovers a plot amidst the festering complacency. Part 3 of The Deadly Assassin features the Doctor and a masked antagonist inside a virtual domain where the conventional rules are suspended. A battle of wills and a hunt for survival ensue, with the Doctor hunted and hunting. It's unlike anything else in the show's history. 20. The Robots of Death, Part 4. Come, see the huge mining ship sweeping a desert planet for minerals, crewed by money-driven sociopaths who work in luxurious outfits while robots do the labor. And then the murders start. Part 4 reveals who's behind everything, and even if you guessed correctly, you may not be prepared for how unhinged this person is. A grisly, intense, occasionally hilarious tale with one of the saddest instances of someone's head exploding in Doctor Who history. 21. The Horror of Fang Rock, Part 3, in which the Doctor, Leela, 3 lighthouse keepers, a bosun, and some awful posh people are trapped in a lighthouse with a shape-shifting alien that wants to kill them all. Terrence Dick's script is efficient, Patty Russell's no bullshit direction points the cast in the right direction, and there's a fine streak of morbid comedy throughout. Part 3 is where, after a few deaths and ominous forebodings, things start getting really bad. 22. The Ribos Operation, Part 3. The Doctor is assigned by the enigmatic White Guardian to find and assemble the Key to Time, because the universe needs to be turned on and off again. He has sent Romana, a recent graduate from the Time Lord Academy, to help him. Romana turns out to be Mary Tam in a series of Lady Penelope costumes, and frequently punctures the Doctor's ego. Part 3 of this Gods and Monsters crime caper contains 2 of the best scenes in Doctor Who. The scene where one of a pair of con men hides from the authorities with Binro the Heretic, which does nothing to advance the plot, but is one of the most important scenes in the entire story. And the bit where a vainglorious warlord strikes the Doctor with his glove in rage, and the Doctor is camply affronted. 23. The Pirate Planet, Part 3. Douglas Adams' debut and best script for Doctor Who continues the quest for the Key to Time in an ostensibly whimsical tale of cyborg pirates and mildly enthusiastic golden ages that also features the highest death toll the show has seen up to this point. Come for the fight between K9 and a robot parrot, stay for the righteous fury underpinning the whole story and Tom Baker's best piece of acting in his entire 70-year tenure. 24. The Androids of Tara, Part 3. The Doctor and Romana continue their quest for the Key to Time on the planet Tara, where the Doctor promptly goes fishing and Romana finds the next segment of the key in about 5 minutes. Then she gets caught up in the Machiavellian schemes of Count Grendel of Grocht, as Doctor Who homages the Prisoner of Zenda. David Fisher's script is relentlessly entertaining, and Peter Jeffries' performance as Count Grendel is incredible. A rip-roaring, witty adventure, Part 3 is the funniest episode, yet also has surprising moments of pathos and depth to it. 25. City of Death, Part 2, in which the Doctor and Romana are on holiday in Paris, and along with punch-drunk Detective Duggan, they investigate the curious crimes of Count Scarleone, a man who appears to have 7 original versions of the Mona Lisa in his cellar. After a slightly choppy episode of setup, Part 2 of City of Death may be utterly perfect. Not to say the rest of the story is bad, it's witty and funny and serious when it needs to be, but Part 2 can legitimately lay a claim to being the best single episode of the show ever. It starts with the "what a wonderful butler, he's so violent" scene.
I say, what a wonderful butler, he's so violent, hello.
Continues to the mystery of the 7 Mona Lisas, and then ends with a cliffhanger that turns the entire story on its head. Perfect. 26. The Keeper of Traken, Part 1. The Doctor and Adric are surprised to find an old man on a throne in the TARDIS. This is the titular Keeper, a being who dedicates their life to maintaining the idyllic life of the Traken Union. The Doctor enigmatically remarks, "They say the atmosphere there was so full of goodness that evil just shriveled up and died. Maybe that's why I never went there." However, in this case, evil has not shriveled up and died, something has taken root. The consuls of Traken are clearly bickering and complacent. Something is rotten. This is the story of the death of a fairy tale. 27. Enlightenment, Part 2. The Doctor, Tegan, and Turlough are given forewarning of something ominous and terrible happening, and then land in a ship's hold before meeting the crew. The officers seem distant and aloof, the sailors slightly confused about exactly what they're doing there. The one thing they agree on is they're taking part in a race. The prize, Enlightenment, which Captain Stryker refers to as the wisdom which knows all things and which will enable me to achieve what I desire most. The strangeness of the officers is superbly acted, the characters chilling and enigmatic, tragic and powerful. Turlough and Tegan both get plenty to do, and Peter Davidson's Doctor excels in stories like this where he can be slightly behind events, but his earnest pursuit is rewarded. 28. The Caves of Androzani, Part 1. The Doctor and Perry, who joined the TARDIS in the last story, land on Androzani Minor and find themselves infected with a deadly disease before being arrested for gun running. There's a lot to enjoy here, the deft world building, with characterization equally effortless, right up until the cliffhanger where the Doctor and Perry face a firing squad. There's a solidity to the production that's only increased when everyone opens fire. 29. The Caves of Androzani, Part 4. The Doctor starts this episode screaming in defiance and crashing a spaceship into a planet, and ends it sacrificing his life to save Perry. In between here and there, we have the almost operatic tragedy of Sharaz Jek, the stunningly brutal dispatch of the Army General and Major, the gunrunners turning on each other, and the betrayal of Morgus by his secretary. It's just payoff after payoff, making this one of the greatest ever stories. 30. Paradise Towers, Part 2. Have you ever read High Rise by J.G. Ballard and thought, wow, I wonder what this would look like as a CBBC production? Well, good news, because in 1987, someone did this. Paradise Towers turned social commentary into a broad pantomime by way of 2000 AD, a hyper-real depiction of high-rise flats populated by grotesques and posh delinquents. Here we get the 7th Doctor running rings around the building's caretakers using their own rulebook, Mel being led around the towers by the Pecs, a coward trying to be an action hero, and the lovely old ladies having a naughty secret. Big, broad fun that sees the show changing in a significant way. 31. Remembrance of the Daleks, Part 1. The Doctor and new companion Ace arrive in London, 1963, as the Doctor has unfinished business. There are strange markings in the playground of the local school, and an old enemy in a familiar junkyard. Set in and around the location of the very first episode, there are callbacks aplenty, but these are grace notes rather than essential elements. Setting up the story's characters and themes with aplomb, it's also dryly witty, action-packed, and assuredly confident. 32. Remembrance of the Daleks, Part 4. Remembrance of the Daleks is a story about racism, using the Dalek Civil War, established in Revelation of the Daleks, as a starting point before looking at racism within the lifetime of Doctor Who. Here it is in the family home, in the cafe, in the local builders, and in the precursor to Unit. This episode also looks really cool. When the Daleks land a shuttle in the school playground, the BBC lower a massive wooden prop into the playground on a crane. While it might have been built from old bins, the Special Weapons Dalek is a serious bit of hardware. More than just the strong visuals, though, this episode builds to what was a jaw-dropping finale at the time, ending on a note of uncertainty that underscores everything we've just seen. 33. Ghost Light, Part 3. The Doctor and Ace arrive at Gabriel Chase in 1883 and are immediately thrust into a world of exaggerated Victorianism, mental instability, nefarious regal supplementation schemes, and an angel in the basement who's really committed to their database. Ghostlight has a reputation for being hard to follow, but we disagree. It's extremely easy to follow in its wake, even if you're not entirely sure how all the elements relate to each other. It's relentlessly entertaining, slightly unsettling, and has got the best joke about murdering and eating a policeman ever broadcast. Part 3 also features the Doctor really annoying a nerd by telling him that he's bad at gatekeeping. A complete mystery to where they got that idea from. 34. The Curse of Fenric, Part 3. The Doctor and Ace arrive at a Navy base during World War II where a coding machine is being worked on. A small force of Russian soldiers have arrived to steal it. Another force is lurking nearby, waiting to be unleashed. The Doctor never could resist a game of traps. The Curse of Fenric is an unusually structured 7th Doctor tale, with the first 3 episodes involving characters moving around the locations and discovering clues while an increasing amount of hell breaks loose. Part 4, The Question of Faith, Who Has It and What Is It In?, is explored through the medium of fighting vampires. By the time an ancient evil has arisen and the base is being besieged by vampires, you could do with a week to recuperate. 35. Survival, Part 1. The Doctor and Ace return to Ace's hometown to see how Ace's friends are doing. Most of them are gone, either to escape the all-encompassing boredom or because they've been kidnapped by cheetahs on horseback and taken to another planet. With a mix of heavily theatrical thematic dialogue and something approaching how people actually talk, Rona Munro's script allows Sophie Aldred to shine and gives suburban kids a reason to be cautious around gammy-looking cats. It's more common now, but it was genuinely unusual to see the Doctor cutting about the suburbs, annoying curtain twitchers, and being pursued by the neighborhood watch. 36. Dalek. The Doctor and Rose arrive at an underground base filled with alien tech, where a billionaire collector has a prize item, the Metaltron, a live alien who refuses to speak. The public reputation of the Dalek was a slightly kish pop culture object, mostly remembered by a joke about them not climbing stairs, having plungers for arms, or appearing in Kit Kat adverts with Bernard Manning. Rob Shearman had to overcome this perception of them. Dalek is the story of one lone Dalek systematically and capably wiping out nearly everyone in the base in an efficiently cruel way, while re-traumatizing the Doctor and being disgusted by its own capacity for empathy. A plunger is now deadly. A Dalek can definitely climb stairs, being now an unstoppable tank controlled by a genocidal Nazi octopus who would rather die than be anything else. All in all, quite a successful rehabilitation of a public image. 37. Father's Day. Rose wants to travel back in time to see her dad die in the 80s. The Doctor, infatuated with her, agrees to this even though it's, at best, a risky move. And so it proves, with Rose saving her dad's life and causing a temporal incident that unleashes monsters and destroys the world. The scale of the destruction, and it being unseen, makes this more unsettling for the trapped survivors, but the main part of the story is Rose meeting her dad and learning that her mum told her an idealized version of events. Pete Tyler is a bloke trying his best, but flawed and aware of it. The scene where Rose pretends that he lived and lies about what they did together, and Pete just responds with,
That's not me.
is, as with so much of this story, heartbreaking. 38. The Doctor Dances. The Doctor and Rose chase a metallic object giving off danger signals through the vortex into World War II London. There, Rose meets Captain Jack, who is hanging out in an invisible spaceship by Big Ben, while the Doctor meets a boy in a gas mask with a strange wound on his hand, continually asking,
Are you my mommy?
This is essentially a zombie horror for children, which opts for the strange and unsettling rather than gore. The repeated plaintive chime of "Are you my mummy?" and the act of touch transmit this plague, and no matter how dated the CGI is, there's always going to be something disturbing about seeing respected actors' heads slowly and crunchingly morph into a gas mask. Despite all this, it's home to a burst of pure joy for this most traumatized of doctors. 39. The Parting of the Ways. The Doctor, Rose, and Captain Jack find themselves in some very 2005 TV parodies, before escaping and discovering that the entire operation is a means to provide an insane Dalek Emperor with living matter from which to secretly build a new army. The story segues smoothly from pop culture parodies to the attempted destruction of Earth. And you realize this whole series has been about Christopher Eccleston's Doctor coming to terms with what he believes he did to end the Time War, providing him with a comparable scenario and seeing if he's willing to go through with it a second time. It's intense, moving, and Eccleston's performance against the Daleks are unlikely to be bettered. 40. Smith and Jones. Martha Jones is a medical student who meets a man in the street, only to find him in bed at her hospital, which is then transported to the moon by rhino-like aliens. No one writes tonal dissonance like Russell T Davies. A combination of wonder, awe, panic, and fear at the hospital on the moon, the comedy of alien race, the Judun with their rhino faces and rhyming language, juxtaposed with their extreme methods of dispensing justice, and the delightful camp nastiness of the antagonist and her straw all add up to an extremely good time. Smith and Jones introduces Martha to the show while juggling umpteen plates and makes it look absolutely effortless. 41. Gridlock. In which the Doctor takes Martha to New Earth, where he's previously taken Rose, to discover that it's empty because everyone is stuck in a colossal traffic jam. As well as emanating a McCoy-era comic book energy, Gridlock reflects the lead's strained relationship at this point. The Doctor, pining for the absent Rose, isn't very open, and Martha, pining for the absent but frustratingly also right bloody there Doctor, is getting fed up over his emotional distance. There's an ongoing theme about faith in this series. Here, it's about the support it can give you in hard times, reflected in the Doctor's descriptions of Gallifrey and the Time Lords to Martha, and whether or not that faith is ultimately restricting. 42 and 43. Human Nature and the Family of Blood. Based on Paul Cornell's 90s novel Human Nature, this sees the Doctor and Martha on the run from the Family of Blood, and the Doctor taking on human form to try to evade them. He becomes John Smith, a teacher at a boarding school in 1913, with Martha working as a maid. Unfortunately, the family finds them, possesses human bodies, and attempt to make a bewildered Smith turn back into the Doctor. In the book, the 7th Doctor becomes human to better understand his companion's grief. Here, fittingly for his character, the 10th Doctor becomes human as a part of a rushed plan that puts Martha into a terrible position and endangers the lives of everyone around him. There's this mercurial rush of energy and charisma that takes people along with him before the bodies start cooling. This story is the best depiction of this. 44. Midnight. The Doctor decides to go on a little tourist shuttle trip around an ice planet, getting to natter away to some strangers and see some shiny things. As long as an ineffable entity doesn't trap them all and possess one of the passengers, it'll be absolutely lovely. It's not an especially original observation to make, but Russell T Davies is very good at writing TV characters. We're introduced to an ensemble cast and know the basics of their relationships and personalities extremely quickly. The possession also cleverly weaponizes characterization. An entity that steals voices, mimics, and learns is one that the Doctor, especially this Doctor, is going to struggle against. And so it proves. A riveting and haunting episode for what is essentially half a dozen people arguing in a space bus. 45. The 11th Hour. The newly regenerated Doctor, Matt Smith, crash lands in Amelia Pond's back garden. Returning years later than he intended, he discovers no one living in the house, a suspicious policewoman, and the precursor to an alien invasion. Under immense pressure following the incredibly popular combination of David Tennant's 10th Doctor and showrunner Russell T Davies, new showrunner Stephen Moffat and then relative unknown Smith perform a soft reboot of the show that's a perfect start for the new and continuation of the old. From the second Smith sticks his head out of the TARDIS door and chirps, "Can I have an apple?" we knew everything was going to be all right. 46. Vincent and the Doctor. The Doctor and Amy, whose husband recently ceased to exist so she can't remember him, visit and befriend Vincent van Gogh. Meanwhile, a heavily metaphorical monster is hiding out in a nearby church. A surprisingly sensitive script from Richard Curtis, you can feel his passion for the subject shining through. The scene where Van Gogh is shown his future reputation as one of the great painters is celebrated, as is the moment where Amy realizes that this doesn't alter the fact that he will still take his own life. But there are also moments of great visual splendor here. The scene where Van Gogh describes how he sees the night sky and the accompanying visuals are an unabashed celebration of creativity and a vibrant high point. 47 and 48. The Pandorica opens and the Big Bang. The Doctor and Amy find River with a Roman legion while investigating Stonehenge. There, they find the Pandorica, a legendary prison, and the Doctor's enemies in wait. Series 5 kept the rough structure of the previous 4 series, and so here we get to see Moffat writing a Russell T Davies-style finale, or at least half of one. While the Pandorica opens, escalates the stakes towards the cliffhanger, ending on the Doctor being trapped, River exploding, Amy being shot, and the entire universe exploding, we then head into the Big Bang and see a Stephen Moffat finale in action. Like Forest of the Dead, this is very different to its first episode, going smaller and more intimate, as if there were an option after the last episode, before a melancholy and then joyous ending. 49. A Christmas Carol. The Doctor attempts to reason with Ebenezer Scrooge surrogate, Kazran Sardik, in order to stop the spaceship where Amy and Rory are role-playing from crashing. The more successful Doctor Who version of Dickens' A Christmas Carol, season 23 is also loosely based on it, featuring the inevitability of death, singing, and flying sharks. 50. Night of the Doctor. A mini-episode where we were promised one of either David Tennant, Matt Smith, or John Hurt would appear. A spaceship is crashing, and its occupant is trying to get the computer to send a distress call, while it asks her if she needs a doctor. At which point, lo and behold, the 8th Doctor, Paul McGann, appears with the line,
"I'm a doctor, but probably not the one you're expecting."
McGann's Doctor appeared once on screen in the 1996 TV movie, which didn't result in an ongoing series. Bringing him back specifically to regenerate into John Hurt's War Doctor scratched the itch many fans had to see McGann play the role again. A short episode, sure, but one that succeeds as a strong, tragic regeneration story from McGann's take on the role. 51. The Day of the Doctor. The 50th anniversary special. The 10th and 11th Doctors meet the War Doctor, a previously unknown incarnation between the 8th and 9th Doctors, at the point just before he destroys Gallifrey in the Time War. Considering there was a point where only Jenna Coleman was contracted to appear in this episode, it turned out rather well, being both celebratory and a great yarn in its own right. David Tennant and Matt Smith have great fun together. Billie Piper doesn't have to remember how to play Rose again after being cast as a sentient superweapon instead, and gets to cut loose a bit too. And John Hurt is inspired casting as someone representing all the previous Doctors and the weight of centuries of war. 52. Mummy on the Orient Express. This is the moment the Capaldi era sparks into life. After falling out in the previous story, the Doctor takes Clara on one last adventure to the Orient Express, in space. Coincidentally, people on board are dying in strange ways, which turn out to be caused by a mummy that only the victim can see. The Doctor proceeds to both save the day and alienate nearly everyone on the train. A great monster and a great story hook, but what really stands out here is the characterization. The scene where the Doctor gets Clara to bring a potential victim to him, asking her to lie for him, is brutal, and the fallout on the beach afterwards is key to letting the 12th Doctor seem something other than cold and indifferent. Pivotal to the following series is the understanding that, while the Doctor might be off-putting and clearly unhinged, the reason that Clara wants to travel with him in the end is simple. She is too. 53. Flatline. The Doctor is trapped in a shrunken TARDIS, so Clara has to investigate the mystery of killer graffiti in Bristol largely by herself. Flatline is a consistently inventive horror story that takes something everyday and weaponizes it. In this case, two-dimensional patterns, drawings, even the ground you're walking on. The second half of Series 8 remains a really strong run of stories. 54. Last Christmas. In which the Doctor and Clara work through their emotional baggage with the help of Killer Crabs, the 2010 Christopher Nolan movie Inception, and Santa. Not many shows could make a story where facehugger-like crabs that make you dream are a key part of a Christmas special, but here we are, 55 and 56, Heaven Sent and Hellbent, in which the Doctor finds himself trapped in a castle where the rooms move and a death-like figure stalks him, all the while trying to grieve the death of Clara. Hellbent, the follow-up episode that only cowards pretend is separate from Heaven Sent, deals with the repercussions of this. In some respects, it's a textbook Moffat season finale. The second episode is a complete rug pull from the first, finding a more thoughtful and interesting story to tell. In this case, though, Hellbent really pushes against the idea of the Doctor's heroism and delves into the uglier facets of the character. It can take a few views to settle, but it grows on each viewing and also enhances the more straightforwardly popular Heaven Sent in the process. 57. The Husbands of River Song. The Doctor arrives in the middle of one of River Song's adventures, and due to his regeneration, she doesn't recognize him. So he ends up being her companion on a crime escapade featuring the removal of several popular comedians' heads. After 40 minutes or so, firmly in romp mode, the story focuses purely on the Doctor and River, bringing their story full circle. It's a really sweet, tender ending and shows signs of the Doctor maturing. The idea of him actually settling down with one person in one place had previously been treated as a joke. Now it's something he does willingly. Hopefully Yaz never watches this episode. That'd be awkward. 58. Thin Ice. The Doctor takes Bill to a fair on the frozen Thames in 1814 and discovers something alien beneath the ice. Remembered more for the Doctor punching a racist than anything else, Thin Ice is one of the great depictions of the 12th Doctor. There's an appropriate coldness to him here as he sees a child die and doesn't flinch, attempts to wriggle out of questions about whether he's killed anyone, and brings Bill with him on this journey. There's that permanently unsettling quality about Capaldi's Doctor, a sense that he likes getting into the abyss just to see if he can get out again. You get this easy-to-follow, engaging procedural with excellent characterization that leads in towards the more anarchic side of the Doctor over the liberal one. 59. The Doctor Falls. The Doctor, hoping that Missy really is capable of changing her ways, lets her do an adventure herself with Bill and Nardole as her unwilling companions exploring a spaceship. Despite, or possibly because of, his desperate intervention, Bill is critically wounded and rushed to the other end of the ship to be operated on. Due to the effects of a nearby black hole, time dilation means time passes differently at one end of the ship to the other. Can the Doctor get to the other end of the ship in time to save his friend? This is the closest the show has got to another Caves of Androzani, with the Doctor sacrificing himself to buy his friends time after getting them into the mess in the first place. On top of that, it's also an incredible Cyberman story, and Master story, and another Master story. 60. Demons of the Punjab. A highlight of the Chris Chibnall era, this story starts with Yaz asking the Doctor to go back in time to learn more about her family. They find Yaz's grandmother as a young woman, but she's engaged to someone Yaz has never heard of. As they try to work out why, the looming partition of India threatens to tear the family apart. During Chibnall's time as showrunner, Doctor Who looked for areas of history the show hadn't covered before. As Doctor Who doesn't seek to change historical events when it depicts them, due to its origins as an educational program, there's a question of sensitivity when it comes to depicting historical tragedy. What Demons of the Punjab does so well is make the fate of one family a microcosm of a greater historical event, an example of partition's repercussions, while forcing the Doctor to observe rather than interfere. That sense of conflict feels appropriate here, at least, the Doctor's powerlessness clearly rankling. You can watch Doctor Who on BBC iPlayer in the UK, and new episodes premiere on Disney Plus around the world. Read more Doctor Who coverage at denofgeek.com.